in terms of figuring out anong mangyari sa Russia, whether tatagal itong regime ni Putin, whether tatagal yung mutiny niyan, or there'll be further fragmentation. So actually, kanina lang nakita natin yung mga ibang top experts, top Russia experts, mga tao na talagang kilala nila ng Russia, have been talking about even the potential prospect of a civil war, no? At pag-usapan natin yan. So, let's just go through the latest and I'll give you a kind of a background. So, for instance, you can check this article, mga kometa, kung saan in-explain na how we're in the midst of some very, very crucial developments right now. Kasi dapat titingnan natin how will the Putin regime respond dito sa meeting niyan at ano yung maging uh, political effect na yan, no? Down the road. Let me just pull out this very interesting article na I think would help us to better understand the situation. So kanina, si President Vladimir Putin actually may speech dito kung saan he warned of, no, against treason, no, at internal betrayal. Now, of course, nagsimula itong crisis na to for and several months kung saan si Prigozhin, no, ito yung chief ng Wagner mercenary group, for si Yevgeny Prigozhin. So for a number of months nagko-complain siya na palpak yung military strategy ng mga commanders ng Russian Armed Forces. And then nagko-complain siya na dapat some decisive measures have to be made, including yung pagpalit dun sa mga top leaders na in charge the Russian conflict. But things kind of escalated to the next level just in the past 48 hours or so when may direct accusation itong tao na ito kung saan sinasabi na siya mismo tinitarget, no, na tinitarget yung kanyang troops. So after that, we see a really sudden escalation of the situation. So in response dun sa threat ni Yevgeny Prigozhin na babalikan niya ito yung mga military leaders na inakusan na tinitarget sila, and he even pushed the argument further, no? Ang implication niya na yung giyera sa Ukraine ay hindi dahil dapat kailangan na may giyera, hindi to dahil sa self-defense, ito ay dahil sa greed supposedly of some of the commanders, etc. So medyo next level na yan, medyo naalala ko tuloy yung isang vlogger ni naglalaglagan na. No, I mean, this is crazy. So President Putin had a speech recently where he responded to that. He said, I appeal to the citizens of Russia, to the person of the armed forces, law enforcement, and security forces, fighters and commanders currently fighting on their positions, repelling the enemy attacks, doing it heroically. Alright, so nag-usap daw siya sa mga commanders to keep things under control, no? I'm just trying to bring out itong... So I really suggest you guys check it out. Probably can hear the
Vladimir Putin has addressed the nation after Wagner mercenary forces claimed control of military sites in Rostov-on-Don. He described the move as treason and said decisive action will be taken.
Жизни и безопасности.
We will defend our country, we will defend our nation, we will defend our citizens against the threats we face today. Some people are trying to use their interests against our country. We need to make sure that we are fighting in Ukraine for the sake of our country and be sure that traitors must not be there. A lot of people have sacrificed their lives for Russia, and those that are trying to sow rebellion and create chaos will fail ultimately.
Well, Wagner chief Yevgeny Prigozhin accuses Russia's military leaders of ordering airstrikes, which killed thousands of his men. He's vowing to seek what he calls justice for the dead. Michael Apple has the latest.
So wait lang guys, that was just an audio. Hindi ko malagay yung video yan, baka magkaroon ng copyright issue, etc. dun sa news. Let me just project to you guys an article that I think will be very helpful to put things into context. I'll just go through it, no? Para ma-appreciate niyo yung context na ito, no? So now some are openly discussing that this could go more than a mutiny and this could potentially slide into a civil war a la First World War or nangyari kay Tsar Nicholas II. Interestingly, President Putin himself discussed the First World War situation where supposedly Russia was on the victorious plane and then internal divisions and all brought the country down. And of course, the result of that eventually was the Bolshevik Revolution that ended the Tsarist regime. Now, let me just put things into context by going through this very illuminating article by Anne Applebaum. So ayon sa kanya, certainly the rest of us still can't know, less than a day after this mutiny began, the true motives of the key players, and especially not of the central figure, Yevgeny Prigozhin, the leader of the Wagner mercenary group. Prigozhin, whose fighters have taken part in brutal conflicts all over Africa and the Middle East, so active sila sa Syria, Sudan, Libya, Central African Republic, and most recently sa Ukraine, claims to command 25,000 men dun sa Ukraine theater. In a statement yesterday afternoon, sinabi ni Yevgeny Prigozhin, yung Russian army daw ay behind an enormous amount of casualties among yung group members na, no, yung mga mercenaries. So may bomb raid na nangyari, tas sila daw na target. Then he called for an armed rebellion vying to topple the Russian military. Prigozhin has been lobbying insults at Russia's military leadership for many weeks, mocking Sergei Shoigu, ito yung Russian Minister of Defense. Supposedly tamad daw itong mga to. And then itak din niya yung Chief of the General Staff as supposedly prone to, quote, paranoid tantrums. Yesterday naman, he broke with official narrative and directly blamed them dun sa mga kapalpakan ng Russian invasion. At ayon sa kanya, all of this could have been avoided if, some corrupt people were not making the big decision, etc. So, medyo next level, escalation na ito. To be honest, I've been following the statements by Yevgeny Prigozhin for quite some time, checking it online, he has been saying, but so he has been criticizing, the military and the people in charge for quite some time, but medyo next level na yan. Kasi ngayon, parang may threat na siya na gagamitin niya yung mga troops niya laban dun sa mga sinisisi niya dun sa kapalpakan ng Russia. So this is kind of crazy. That's why some are saying, what's gonna happen here? Is this mutiny gonna spread? Because there are many people who are unhappy about where the war is going. Dahil may mga more radical, more ultra-nationalist people na gusto nila mas aggressive pang Russia, potentially even using tactical nuclear weapons. Will Putin be able to hold this together? Who are gonna be dropped? I mean, obviously, Yevgeny Prigozhin medyo in a very delicate situation na siya. But what about the other side, yung mga inakusa na? So this is gonna be very, very difficult 24 hours or so for President Putin, among others. And just to put things into context, mga kameta, no? Because if you look at Russia, it's such a big country that it has rarely buckled under external invasion. Usually what happens with Russia is that pag Russia goes down or there's a regime change, it's because of internal changes. Let me just give you some historical precedents. So throughout history, of their past half a millennium, there were at least 3 major invasions, of Russia. The first were from the Swedes, This is from King Charles, Sweden, and then, of course, he was defeated eventually in today's Ukraine, somewhere in today's Ukraine. So this is by Charles VII of Sweden. Battle of Poltava, I think it's in today's Ukraine. Natalo siya. There's amazing book about this personalities, etc. that I can suggest separately to you guys. So that was like the first major invasion by a foreign imperial force of Russia. It didn't work. And then the second big one was by Napoleon, right? Yun din. It also failed eventually. So even Napoleon could not do it. So the Grand Army of Napoleon could not do it. The Swedes could not do it. Now the Germans also tried it. By some counts more than once. It also didn't work. So we saw that during Second World War, Battle of Operation Barbarossa. Yes, similar to the French or even to the Swedish to a certain degree centuries earlier, may initial gains yung kabila, nag-retreat into strategic depth. Eventually, Russia and its weather and its depth and its just breadth took care of the enemy. So very rarely there was regime change in Russia. So the Romanov dynasty, for instance, really lasted for hundreds of years. And it was brought down, not because of a war per se or foreign invasion, but it was brought down because of the internal revolution and civil war that happened in light of yung deadlock dun sa gera sa First World War. So when Russia's military was not doing very well on the front, that created a lot of internal divisions. And eventually that gave headway first to the socialists and the Kerensky type, but later on the Bolsheviks were able to take advantage of it, hence the toppling of the Romanov dynasty, and quite a brutal, brutal one. So the case of Tsar Nicholas II is something that many are discussing. Now, the Soviet Union, of course, lasted for what? Close to a century. Once it goes down, and then more or less it's Putin who has been in charge of Russia since the transition to post Cold War period, with some sort of with Yeltsin and the rest in between. No, so if you look at it, the idea of Russia, regime change in Russia because of external factors, that's very, very unlikely. After all, Russia has one of the biggest stockpiles of nuclear weapons. So yung idea na, Ukraine could go on and topple Putin, or the NATO could come and topple Putin, alam natin hindi mangyari yan. But the situation in Ukraine has become so desperate, so crazy, right? So desperate, so crazy, that it looks like it's creating super, super damning internal divisions right now. So as I said, there are people who are saying that what's happening in Ukraine is because of incompetence, so you just have to put more competent people there. There are people who are saying the Ukraine situation could be resolved if Russia goes more aggressive, uses even more extreme weapons, tactical nuclear weapons. There are a lot of people. There are actually open debates about that right now in Russia. I can send the links that. There are like open debates on whether Russia should go to the next level and use all of its weaponry, strategic weaponries. And then there are people who are extreme, who are still extreme, and then they're saying, no, the whole political regime overseeing the war is problematic. And in fact, perhaps the war was not even needed, right? So yeah, and this is next level. Because if you are talking about yung mga liberals, progressive opposition, umalis na lahat mga yan na-exile lahat yung mga yan. And then the few state people like Navalny, for instance, ay nakulong, di ba? At yung si Morotov naman, yung nanalo ng Nobel Peace Prize together with Maria Ressa, I think he's sticking around, but they're not in a position to mobilize political forces internally. So this is really a fight among conservatives, right-wings, nationalists within Russia. So titignan natin over the next 24 hours, mga kameta, how is Putin going to respond to this mutiny? Operationally, I doubt that this is going to be successful unless this really spreads and there's much more discontent that we don't know about at the very upper echelons. But even if this is taken care of operationally, meaning the supposed mutiny is struck down, which is where you rather bet, in terms of possibilities, there's going to be a political fallout of this, because unless there's a huge success by Russia, unless there's really a breaking with the deadlock, some sort of breakthrough, the discontent is just going to get deeper and deeper. No? And that this is where I'm saying, mga kameta, talagang pagdating sa politika talaga, it's so hard to not be tempted to think that some people are so powerful they'll stay there forever. But that's the thing they say about authoritarian regimes. They look so solid, they look so stable, until they're suddenly not there anymore. Because the problem we have with non-democracies, kasi ito yung mga kameta, yung mga democracies, dahil bukas yung mga political system nila, dahil malaya yung kanilang media, dahil malaya yung mga critics, nakikita mo yung kanilang kahinaan, no? Yung mga weaknesses. The weaknesses, sometimes not even real weaknesses, are there in the open because may opposition ka na parati tries to make you look weak, make you look bad, etc. But in authoritarian system, dahil one-man rule yan, because takot yung mga tao mag-criticize sa kanya, because walang opposition, walang freedom of expression, walang free media, and then if anyone criticizes from abroad, sabihin nila, ano yan, propaganda yan, blah, blah, then it creates this artificial idea of, shoot, napakalakas naman yan, unshakable yan, Superman yan. And now we see, this is the law of politics. Pag na-eliminate mo yung opposition, political opposition, ang power struggle ay papasok sa loob. And this is exactly where we're seeing where things are going. Because wala nang opposition sa Russia, democratic opposition in every sense of the word, essentially the contestation is now within the ruling faction. No? And nakikita natin sa ruling regime, there are actually multiple factions, not ruling regime, there are multiple factions. And yun nga let's see if this move by the Wagner Group is gonna strengthen the voice of more extremists, or actually strengthen the voice of the more relatively moderate forces. And some would argue that actually Putin is much more moderate compared to some of the people out there who are pushing for more radical approaches. Now, the other thing we have to keep in mind is when you talk about superpowers which are wounded, sometimes they're more dangerous when they're wounded. No? So, yung mga nag-aakala na yung mga nag-assume dito na maging mas mahina si Putin or mas maging mahina ng Russia and that Russia will withdraw from Ukraine after this, they could be very wrong. The opposite could happen. Kasi the more na vulnerable yung mga ganitong regimes, the more they could be aggressive externally. Kaya kung titignan mo yung response ng international community, including from the West, parang you can see na medyo ipit din sila because they're worried na, first of all, don't get your expectations too high. Pangalawa, even if Putin goes down, we don't know what's gonna come next. It could be even more extreme. Pangatlo, even if Putin stays, the mutiny goes down, then a much more vulnerable Russia could actually become much more aggressive in Ukraine in order to resolve internal contradictions. No, so grabe, this is crazy. But what I can say is this: again, once again, nakita natin na regimes that look very solid on the outside, regimes that were able to successfully completely crowd out yung opposition, etc., biglang makikita mo yung struggle talaga sa loob. Bigla talaga makita mo yan. So, mga kameta, babalikan natin yan, itong issue na ito, because we're talking about the biggest country on earth. We're talking about supposedly one of the most powerful men on earth, right? But at the same time, we're looking at the fact that perhaps many people overestimated certain people. And we're also forgetting the fact that pagdating politika, dami mga plot twists dito. You know? And now there are people who are openly discussing the potential na magkaroon ng civil war sa Russia. I mean, I have my political views, but we have our hearts go to ordinary people in Russia, and I hope they don't suffer unnecessarily because of anything like that. As much as my heart is with Ukraine, my also heart is with innocent, ordinary people anywhere on earth. No, so let's hope this doesn't get too crazy. But I'm sure there are also a lot of people that are hoping for some radical political change or transformation. I think the hope is, whether the mutiny succeeds or doesn't succeed, Russia will recalibrate and retrench, pagdating dito sa operations in Ukraine. And some probably will even push the hope further and say, baka there's even a possibility for democratic revolution or transformation. Personally, though, I'm quite skeptical, and my fear is actually Russia might become even more aggressive, even if it overcomes this situation relatively seamlessly. So let's see where this goes. Hope for the best, but also prepare for other things. Don't have any kind of wishful thinking. So yun ang for now, mga kameta. I'm still gonna research on this. I'm gonna still check on this. What are the things that are gonna happen, and then balikan natin yan hopefully soon with more updates about the state of affairs. I'm still checking some of the videos online. So for instance, ito yung isang video na chine-check natin ngayon, mga kameta. Ito. So ito daw. Russian road policeman shows a large number of trucks placed on a highway to Moscow to prevent yung Wagner from reaching Moscow, no? So medyo, So naglalagay na sila ng truck, no? Binablock ngayon yung roads papunta sa Moscow. So na-explain nung guy na baka nandun yung mga trucks, what they're hoping to achieve. So, ipopost yan natin sa baba, mga kameta. Alright? I'm also gonna post a number of stuff dun sa Twitter page natin. So, can you also check that? Maraming salamat, mga kameta. Sabi ko nga, magpahinga na tayo. Medyo pagod pa ako since kahapon eh. Next week tayo mag-catch up. But I sense there are a lot of our friends and folks who are thinking, what on earth is happening? So, I'm just giving you an update. So, in short, the power struggle that was building up for past 6 months or so because of deadlock dun sa war in Ukraine, mukhang now completely out in the open na siya. So hindi lang ito mga kritisismo among generals and officials, etc. May direct challenge na ngayon. So now you have a major mercenary group with 25,000 troops under a very charismatic leader threatening the military establishment in Russia. Now Putin comes in, he has drawn the line and says, this is wrong, this is treason, but that has really set it up for confrontation. No? So there was no effort by the president or anyone to mediate among them. And as I said, maraming mga wishful thinking dyan na this could make Russia more conservative about its foreign policy. Some were even more wishful thinking maybe this could bring about democratic revolution, but you have to prepare for the opposite to happen. Russia will be more aggressive, etc., in light of the internal vulnerabilities that are now out in the open. Again, hope for the best, but also prepare for other contingency. Maraming salamat. Thank you very much, and our prayers for people of Russia and all innocent people, who unfortunately suffer when political crises happen. But of course, first and foremost, our prayers with people of Ukraine, and hope the war stops as soon as possible, right? But this is the situation we have to watch out. What's happening inside Russia, because this will have direct implication on what happens next also in Ukraine. All right? Salamat, God bless, and have a good weekend.